Yeah, the topic maybe today what we're thinking of going in is thoughts, negative thoughts, positive attitude, and you can decide which one you want to go with.
Yeah, I think that for me, just to kind of frame in, okay, positive thoughts, negative thoughts. What do you want to do? Tell me the anecdote story that you told me earlier. That I really like the way that's frames in this
Yeah,
idea.
so there's this question, right? It's you have a dog, you have two dogs. One dog is chained up in the dark, always in the dark, and you have the second dog chained in the light. And then the question is, which dog survives? Which dog lives? And most people are going to answer either the one in the light or the one in the dark. And it's a trick question, but the answer is the one that you feed. So the dog that's going to survive is which one of the two dogs that you feed. Just like your thoughts or you have your negative thoughts, you have your positive thoughts. Which ones are the ones that are going to survive? And that's going to be the ones that you continue to feed, the ones that you continue to think of and move accordingly to.
Yeah,
You asked something really like how do you deal with stress, and that came to my mind automatically is I don't focus on it. I completely
right,
ignore it, and I focus on either getting the task at hand done, or I focus on what the positive things, even though there's a negative situation,
right.
and I feed the dog that's in the light.
You feed the dog that's in the light, right? We often will feed. You're going to feed one of the two.
Yeah,
The dog's going to live.
that's a good point you're bringing up because you can't like not feed one or the other. Like it's either cold or it's hot. There's not really a temperature words. I mean, I guess there's neutral, but there's either light or there's dark.
Yeah,
There's up and there's down. So you have to, in terms, you have to do one or the other. You focus on negative, you focus on positive.
yeah,
Very rarely can you just not focus on anything at all,
yeah.
especially when you have a hard time with problems or stress. It's very, very hard to not focus on them. But then you can think, okay, let's shift my mentality. How do I resolve the issue? What can I do? What can I not do? What are the positive things that I have? If there's a circumstance that you can't do absolutely nothing about it, then start thinking about the positive things that you do have and understand that patience is what you may need at the time. But don't feed that dog in the dark. And that's a good point. You're always going to be feeding one or the other. You can't just go without feeding one or the other.
So throughout the rest of this conversation, right? If we associate feeding the dog and the light, what you're saying is you're focusing in your energy and effort on positive thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
If we feed the dog in the dark, what you're saying is that we can be feeding negative thoughts and self-defeating thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And if you focus on those, you're going to only feed and grow those thoughts. So as we kind of continue on in this idea of today's topic of how do you overcome negative thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
I asked you in the form of negative thoughts being like stress related, work related, those times where you don't feel like motivated in
Mm-hmm.
thought. You're saying, well, you got to figure out which one of those you're feeding. Is that right?
Yeah, no, you said something right. We're like, okay, so what do we go with the subject today? Then you also mentioned I was talking about the hard times and that, and you said, okay, so what motivates you? And then I said, well, sometimes we don't feel motivated. Sometimes we want to quit. I mean, I probably want to quit more times than the average person because I put myself in situations that stretch me, that push me to those limits. And so I probably want to quit more than the average person, but nobody would assume that. They go, Marco's just positive. Everything goes right for Marco. He's got it all figured out. And in reality, I'm an individual that has more questions than answers. I'm an individual that I feel like I have less things figured out than I have things figured out. I'm an individual that I probably have more negative thoughts than the average person, but I decide not to feed them.
Mm.
And that's where people don't realize it because nobody really gets in my mind. But I think of quitting a lot, but I don't feed those thoughts. Those thoughts die in my head. They resurface, they come back. But I decide to, okay, there's this dog in the dark, and it's trying to take me out. It wants me to feed him so then he can come and eat me.
Wow.
And I'm like, I have to keep feeding the dog here regardless. I have to warm the light. I have to keep in my positive thoughts.
Focus on the
Focus on the
positive thoughts.
positive. Okay, there's this issue. There's this. What can I do to not get fed into that, to not fall into the negative?
Yeah.
And then, okay, if I can't do anything and it's just a time of waiting, okay, what can I do while I'm waiting to do so that's going to be beneficial to me? You know, can I hang out with friends who bring positive to me? Can I read a book? Can I focus on a certain hobby? Can I get more knowledge? You can always get more knowledge about any subject. And that's really what maybe I do, is I just continue to learn, and or other areas where I can keep growing in a positive way and keep myself busy instead of feeding into those negative thoughts. Because I think I probably have more negative thoughts than the average person, honestly. People just don't realize that.
It's interesting because what you're talking about is a series of activities that you're doing that help keep the refrigerator full
Mm-hmm.
of what you're going to feed.
Mm-hmm.
And so here I go, going on metaphor after metaphor
No.
to try to be consistent, right?
Yes.
You're the food pantry where you draw from, right? You're building stock and inventory in the pantry of your person,
Mm-hmm.
so that when given the opportunity to feed the negative thoughts or given the opportunity to feed the positive, you're not denying that the negative thoughts exist.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying, no, I'm choosing to draw within the pantry, the resources, the commissary of my person, which I'm sure part of your core values that we've talked about several times. You owe it to not just who you are today, but all of the other versions of yourself to dig deep, get into there and say, I have no other choice
Mm-hmm.
but to feed the positive parts of where I'm going to go.
Yes.
And that starts with where you want to go, starts with your thought life.
Mm-hmm.
So momentum and direction and all of the goals and plans that you have are really, they're rooted in focusing in, feeding the positive thought life that you have. But what about the person who struggles to, it maybe just be easier? They don't have the resources, maybe they don't have the discipline. It seems easier to just feed the negative thoughts.
It does.
Why?
In a way, I would say that feeding the negative thoughts is the easier thing to do. And so you have to build muscle in the small things to overcome, right? I haven't always been able to tolerate the amount of stress and problems and optimisticness that I have always had. It starts with the baby steps, right? And those baby steps grow into bigger and bigger and bigger steps. If my car isn't starting this morning and I'm running late to work and I spill coffee on myself, if somebody talked to me rudely or didn't say good morning to me, just those things individually can cause negative thoughts in you. And most people feed those small things. If you can't overcome those small things, you're never going to conquer the bigger negative thoughts, because there's different levels of negative thoughts, right? And I believe if you start conquering the smaller ones, it'll help you be able to conquer the bigger ones. So, like I said, if I drop coffee, if somebody calls me a rude name, or somebody just doesn't say good morning, I'm not going to get hurt about it. I'm going to be understanding, and I'm going to take it as positive. I'm not going to look at the negative, because that dog starts to grow. It's a very small puppy, but the more you feed it, the bigger and bigger and bigger it gets. Your negative thoughts, the more you feed them, the bigger and bigger they get. And a lot of times, the negative is the easy thing to do. You know, it's easy to quit.
Yeah.
It's easy to give up on your dreams. It's easy to quit, bail out, and do the next thing. It's easy to make an excuse for yourself, so you don't have to confront your dreams or the next level or the bigger picture.
Right.
It's easier to talk negative about someone and be jealous of someone that's conquering something, or make an excuse why that person can do it and you can't. Therefore, it gives you a reason why you are the way you are, opposed to confronting the real truth, which is, okay, this is the truth. The positive thing about it is this: it's going to require some work. It's going to require me to focus. It's going to require me to learn, whatever. but most people rather take the easy way out, and the easy way out is the negative thoughts. However, at the end of all of that, those negative thoughts, that dog that you're feeding is going to kill you, is
Yeah.
going to destroy your life, is going to end up putting you in a scenario that you're not going to be content with.
Yeah.
Which is, if you would have fed, if you would have done the hard things, if you would have, put yourself in failure, but still be negative or positive about it, if you would have taken somebody not saying good morning to you and you saying good morning back to them, and if you lost your keys and your car's not starting, instead of telling your boss, hey, I'm calling in, or just being mad about it, like, why does all the bad stuff happen to me? And be like, okay, this is what happens. Happens to everyone. Looking at it the positive way. Okay, find a way where you can make it positive. And sometimes I make up scenarios that may not be real. Like, okay, maybe if I would have got if I couldn't lose my keys and I got in the car and I drove, maybe I would have had an accident.
Right.
Maybe something like that. And you don't know. Sometimes there is crazy behind, sometimes there's not. Most of the time I say that we're not, but you still have to figure out a way to, within yourself, look at it in a positive way and be able to keep feeding that positiveness instead of falling into the easy, falling into negative side of things.
Sure.
And growing that dog that one day is going to kill you.
Yeah.
Either the good dog's going to protect you, it's going to take you further in life, or the dog in the dark is going to eat you at some point if you keep feeding it.
One of the things, that I hear you talking about is, it's okay. What if somebody says, hey, Marco, that sounds really easy, right? You're an entrepreneur. You for the most part, you get to be self-led. You work autonomously. Well, Marco, what about me? I'm a student and I'm in a project and I've got all these people who it seem like all they got running around in the cages of their life are the dogs in the dark, the negative thoughts. And maybe somebody's in a work situation where they're on a team or a cohort where the people on their team make it extraordinarily difficult. Really what I'm saying is there's an atmosphere where you feel like you're the only one trying to feed some positive thoughts and energy and momentum into and infuse that into an atmosphere that's really negative. Very. Okay. How do you overcome that?
So let me answer this, and then I want to get your input on it.
Okay.
There's two things. If you are not individually strong enough and positive enough, mature enough to be able to take in a lot of negative people, and you are going to have to be that change. That's going to be, I think it's very rare to find a person who can change that much. I don't even know if I can take that. What I say is you just get out. You are the what you surround yourself with. The 5 people around you is who you become. If you hang around negative people, it's going to get to you. Like, there is just no solution to something like that. I personally don't think there is. There is, numbers do play a role. And if you're around 5 negative people, you're going to be negative. Like I said, there could be that you're very mature, very positive. The chances of you overtaking the negative people are slim to maybe none. I don't know if there's people who are capable of doing that. I think what happens is you start to become more negative and it starts to affect you. Just like if you have a good banana and you have 5 rotten bananas around it, what's going to happen? Yeah. It's inevitable. And I say, get out of the situation. Get out of. I'd say quit the job, honestly, because your positive mindset is the most. Now, I'm not saying just, okay, I see what you guys are talking about. I'm going to the office. I'm going to quit right now. No, you have to have a game plan to execute, right? You have to have a job lined up.
Or if you're a student, you got to you got to find a way to make it work.
Or if you're a student, maybe if you're in the morning class, maybe change to the afternoon class. Yeah. If you're joining with these people, figure out a way to not spend as much time with them and go spend time with other people who are positive and just go sleep there. You have to find a way to surround yourself with people who are positive and get out like as soon as possible. Once you have a plan and execution to execute accordingly, move out of the group, because you're going to be the top 5 people you surround yourself with. I don't care how positive you are.
Yeah.
That is a circumstance of your surroundings.
So I know you wanted to ask a question, but I think it's interesting because we started off by acknowledging we just stepped into this podcast right after grabbing really great lunch.
Yeah.
Just down right here. What's that place
Blue
called?
Sushi.
Blue Sushi.
Yeah.
Yeah, Blue Sushi. We sat in the bar area and sat in this nice little booth, just the two of us, and bartender, her name's Sky. You know, we asked her because we were talking about podcasts.
Yeah, we have some ideas.
And we had some ideas, and so we were just saying, she doesn't watch any podcasts, so really didn't go anywhere. But anyway, the conversation ended up being an interesting shift in the conversation because she's not a manager, but she, as one of her colleagues, her name is Casey. I only know that because we're right here in Kansas City. So Casey comes walking by, and then all of a sudden, Sky, our server, starts talking about how positive this person is. She's uplifting everybody around her. She's always got something great to say about either the people she works with or the patrons at the restaurant. Like, she just seems to be this super intense, positive person, and nobody's going to ever get her down. And obviously, you can see the age difference, right? Yeah. It looked like, I don't really know, but to me, it looked like maybe Casey was a few years younger. But here she is, and she's making an impression, having a leadership quality that another one of her colleagues took so much notice. Our server didn't talk about her, or she did a little bit, but maybe a little bit. But she was so quick to give a compliment to somebody, all because of this person's positivity and energy, and that's infectious.
Yes,
you're talking about don't let 5 people, 2 people, 3 people, 1 person extinguish that positivity. And it kind of makes me want to go and figure out what makes Casey tick to be such a positive impact. Obviously, we didn't really actually meet her, but right?
Yeah, no, that's a good good observation you make, and an explanation that you bring behind it. And it's to like, okay, you know, she's being positive and impacting those around her, and is there, and the people around her seem to be open. I mean, Sky seems like a good person too, and the manager, before he was there, he said, thanks for coming in, guys, and so on. So yeah, there's a soil where that seed can grow. In a situation where everybody's negative, there's not a good soil for that seed to grow. And that's where I would say get out. Like you said, you know, most situation, like, yeah, your positivity, I believe, is what you seek to keep at all costs. Like, you do whatever it takes to keep your positive mindset, to keep your positivity alive, to keep faith going, to keep all that going. Because the second that you lose that, you lose so much. You're becoming, you may die to your negative thoughts and your negative things in different ways. I'm not saying in a physical way that you're going to die, but your dreams are going to die. Your career may die. Your goals, so many things, your relationships, a lot of things can die because you keep feeding those negative thoughts. And it's find a way to get to the positive. Like,
find a way. So you were going to ask a question about what you were sharing earlier. Does that spring back to what you were saying? Was there another part of that you wanted to ask, or
what was the question?
Well, you had said there you wanted to get my feedback on one of those things.
I wanted to get your feedback on what do you think is, when there's a bunch of negative people around you, what do you think you should do or move accordingly?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because I can be a bit of an extremist sometimes. So like, sometimes I'm like, you know, I can be an extremist. And so, I mean, what if it's your family? You know, like, it could be a situation where you're positive and all your family is negative. Not saying that's your case, but like, if somebody out there's watching, like, okay, I'm all positive, my family's all negative. Maybe it's someone who's fairly young, who's still a teenager. They're not going to move out or anything like that. How do you move on from that? How do you?
Well, let me take I think the harder of the 2 questions first, right? And I'll reframe that and say, what do I do if I am a negative person? What do I do if I have a pattern and a history of having very little vision and hope and optimism? I can self-identify as feeding the dog in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
And look, my heart goes out to people
Yeah.
where they feel hopeless
Oh yeah.
and they feel ineffective in their ability to either change their own mindset
Mm-hmm.
or to change the atmosphere and the environment that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they don't have the ability to just simply quit and move on
Mm-hmm.
for various reasons. That's a real tough one. I go back to what we've never talked about on the podcast, but we've talked quite a bit about success cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that really no matter what we do in our thought life, it's all has to start with some sort of action. So feeding either the dog of negative or the dog of positive thoughts is taking action in some form, right? It starts with our thoughts, and what we think leads to what we believe about certain things,
Mm-hmm.
about ourselves or about others. But ultimately, when we have a belief system, then it leads then next to how we live our life. What actions we take are really connected to what we believe and then what we've been thinking about. So I really like this conversation because ultimately downstream from thought is going to be some sort of an action
Mm-hmm.
that feeds one or the other.
Yes.
So how do I break the negative cycle of thought and belief system that looks like my actions only feed negativity?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would say that at the root of a person who is struggling to get out of the negative thought life, the negative patterns of what they feed, I would say that uh, the ultimate goal is to build confidence in you. And I think that the ultimate way to build confidence is part of a wheel of success cycle. The ultimate goal to produce and be successful doesn't just start with success itself. Everybody knows that.
Mm-hmm.
But if we backtrack the cycle, it all starts with an activity of some kind. So you do an activity that is either a revenue generating activity, a positive momentum activity. We talk a lot about doing a task
Mm-hmm.
that is productive towards something that you know is positive, not the negative, but something that you know is positive. For example, if you're in sales, nobody loves to do cold calls or calls in general.
Mm-hmm.
Sending out the emails, the text message, all that stuff. That's a difficult task because you're being told over and over and over, no, 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 or clicking on the hangups. You can be a student and, nobody loves to study, but if you don't do certain activities,
Mm-hmm.
you know that the byproduct of no activity equals no results. So you have to do something in an activity level on a task-driven part that is something that gives you some results.
Mm-hmm.
Because without results, you have no chance of success. So if you do something positive in an activity and you focus on the task, you're going to have some sort of result. Even if you get 100 people hanging up on you, one person's going to pick up, two people are going to pick up. You have to do something positive to get you some result. And that result will give you some success. Results always end up being something that pushes and produces success. Man, and once you have some success, what success produces is really invaluable, and that's confidence. And the more confidence you have, guess what you're going to do? More activities.
Mm-hmm.
And you're all the way back at the beginning again. So I would say for the person who's really struggling in their negative thought life, who maybe they're either in an atmosphere of negativity or they just don't have a lot of confidence, maybe just start by creating a task that you know you can accomplish so that you can get a result that's really positive. And that positive result is going to give you some success. That success is going to give you confidence. And guess what confidence does? It's like what we talked about earlier. It's putting into the pantry
Mhm.
of your thought life something to feed more of,
Mhm.
right? It's like Costco of food shopping when you get some successes and that confidence that comes with it.
Mhm.
Boy, there's a lot you get in return, not just in maybe monetary, but the character of who you are. It reinforces your core values. It says, right, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It reminds you that my purpose in life is bigger than just the task. Oh, it's also giving me confidence. And now, boy, you start that cycle over and over again. And if your core values are helping other people, look how
Mhm.
much more you can accomplish. Now, all of a sudden, I know I'm going on this one.
No, go on.
When you step into a room, you can change the atmosphere of the room you walk into because confidence, nobody can steal that from you.
No.
You can change everything by just your presence in a room, but it's not because you were born that way. It's because you have a pattern of activities that give you results, that give you success, that give you confidence.
Mhm.
You've earned it. It's like what you've talked about. There are certain, we owe it to future, and I'm sorry, we owe it to past versions of ourselves where we have overcome obstacles and we're still standing. And we're still standing because somewhere along the way, we've been propped up with confidence. It doesn't mean you do it all by yourself too,
Right.
but that would be to the person who's struggling to have the positive mindset. They feel like they only feed the negative. Boy, I'll tell you, that's one way. I know it sounds maybe cliche. We'll just do some sort of activity, but if you don't, you're only going to perpetuate
Yeah.
the emptiness that you already feel.
Well, it's. I mean, it's. You think you put it really, really well, and you made a very clear picture as to what that is. And I would say the only thing that was coming to my mind is momentum. Like I said the same thing about the thoughts, about how it starts with the small ones. And like I said, you could even maybe look at it as two cups, right? And every time there's a positive thought, you put it in there. Every time you put it in there, once it gets full, it's not because you just thought about it. It's because you put a lot of drops at a
Yes.
time. And that's the same thing that goes to what you're saying is it starts with a small action. It starts with one thing and then it leads to another. Next thing you know, you got a cup full and that's success. Now you got two, now you got three. Now because you've done it once, you've done it twice, you got confidence, you know what you're worth, you know what it is, and you continue to move. So, but it starts with one thing and it's momentum, right?
Mhm.
It's all about momentum. It
Yeah.
starts small.
Yeah.
Nobody just starts confident, like you said. Nobody just starts knowing everything. Nobody
Yeah.
starts being the best.
Yeah.
To be the best, you have to suck at first.
Yeah.
You have to not be any good at it. You have to not know.
Yeah.
Every professional athlete that's out there and anybody you consider the GOAT, they all started somewhere where they were
Right.
no good and they didn't
Right.
know anything. But
Right.
because they took action, like you said,
Yeah.
they had a positive attitude to it.
Yeah.
They fed the dog in the light. Little by little, they became better and better and better.
Right.
And they got to a point where that confidence showed out in the field. And I can think back to playing sports, right? When you're not very good at a sport, you don't feel very confident and you don't act accordingly. But once you start to get better, you start to get more confidence. Now you own the field. Now you can see that on the field when a player's confident and
Yeah.
when one is not. And I can look back to like, okay, I didn't take that shot because I wasn't confident.
Right.
I wasn't confident because I didn't practice enough, because I didn't give myself enough proof, because whatever the reason was, right? But you can kind of correlate it back to, okay, if you have practiced 1,000 times,
Right.
I'd be confident to do it one time on the field. And so it starts with the small thing. It starts with one step at a time. You're exactly right. It starts with
Yeah.
action, it starts with a positive mindset, and it starts with the small steps, the small things, and then those accumulate and those grow to therefore take on the bigger things.
Yeah.
So start small. That's the perfect time to start. Is when you got nothing. When it's big or small. Like start with the small things, and then those
Yeah.
will accumulate.
Yeah, there's a lot of imagery that comes to my mind when you tell that story, whether it's in sports or being the goat of something. Just a lot of things come to
Mhm.
mind visually for me.
Yeah.
one of them is this idea that biting off more than you can chew.
Mm-hmm.
Giving yourself some realistic goals is important. Um, I think anything worth having is worth doing.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we have to remember, sometimes if the worth having is so important, but that having of something is a really big thing, it's almost like pushing a boulder up a hill.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to just understand this is a big task.
Yep.
This is a big goal that you have, and it's not going to be easy. And if you stay the course, right, once you get to the boulder to the top of the hill,
Mm-hmm.
it goes over into what you talked about with momentum. Because once you're over a certain point where you've done a lot of hard work to get to a point where now things can start, this boulder, this big
Mm-hmm.
task, you can either get other people on board, or you have momentum in the form of maybe financial backing, or a systems,
Yep.
how you have things organized, where you really get not just you pushing the boulder, but other people
Mm-hmm.
believe in what you're doing,
Right.
or the task at hand. And yeah, it got to a certain point, but once it's at the top of the hill, guess what? There's only one place for the momentum to go, and that starts to move downhill pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And the power of that is really, like you said, it's unstoppable. But boy, I'll tell you, if you're not focused in on the goal, then you're going to give up, and that boulder is going to just end up falling on top of you, and
Yep.
that can be defeating sometimes. I guess when you talk about sports, and practice and practice and practice, and I remember I was a golf coach, and I remember
Mm-hmm.
working with a lot of the freshmen in the school, and
Yeah.
these were kids that didn't have a lot of experience, and I would always have my first team meeting every time. I'd say, the only difference between you and Tiger Woods is it's about 1 million practice shots.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to set your targets on being Tiger Woods.
Yep.
He put in the time. He put in the experience. He
Mm-hmm.
put in the sacrifice. He pushed that boulder up a hill. And at some point, boy, something flipped.
Oh, yeah.
And that guy became the greatest golfer, in my opinion, in the history of
Mm-hmm.
the game, right? So these kids are like, oh, I'm only 1 million shots away from getting. Okay, well, that's
Better
one.
start, yeah.
Oh, that's two. You shanked it. You start adding that up to 1 million shots. I'll tell you what, some of these kids can get pretty darn good, but you have to put the time and effort in. That's feeding some positive thoughts.
Yeah, no.
Just through action.
And
right
so
there.
as you were speaking of that, it made me think back to when I was in 5th grade.
Okay.
So in 5th grade, it's intermediate school is what it's called back in Dodge City. It's between elementary and the middle school.
Yeah.
And that's when they let you play instruments.
Okay.
And I went in to see if I could play an instrument.
Yeah.
They told me I was good for the trombone.
Okay.
They made me try it. They only told me that because they needed more trombone players. It had nothing to do with my
You weren't
skills.
naturally gifted?
No, they just needed trombone players. Like, let's get this kid. He's a trombone player.
They didn't have to measure your arm first to see if you could.
Right. I mean, my arm was pretty small then. So they just like, you blow on all these instruments, you try all these, you play them and see which one they think it's good for you. And for some reason, it's trombone. I really do think it's because they needed more trombone players. It wasn't enough.
You didn't know that.
I didn't know that, but I got suckered into it. And so I started playing the trombone, and the first thing you learn the scale, right? You learn your scale, blah, 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 do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I tried, and I got very frustrated. It was about a month into the school, into this music thing. Everybody surpassed me. I was the last one, because they actually would set us by ranking. So first chair, second chair, third chair. Just like most places do.
In the orchestras.
And I was at the very end. I was the last one. I couldn't get the scale, and I was getting frustrated. And I was just so frustrated. I told my mom and my dad, hey, can you guys buy me a stand, and maybe I can practice at home, or I'm going to have to quit or something, because this isn't working out for me. So my parents bought me the stand. I took my trombone home. I started practice. And I can remember one time coming to tears of how frustrated I was because it wasn't working out. My mom said, no, you can do it. So just keep trying. And here I go and try again and try again and try again. And I was so frustrated, but I kept going. Like, I didn't let my emotions stop me.
Mm.
I didn't let, even though I wasn't sure if I was able to do it, I kept doing it and over and over and over. I started to go to school, before school, after school, during music. I was just practicing, I was focused. I wasn't talking to anyone. I was just focused on my instrument. Well, I think we had like a weekend where the guy that was top chair, he was gone for a few days, and he shows back up, and now I'm the first chair, and he's confused. He's like, "Wait, what are you doing sitting there?" I'm all like, "I think I'm first chair now. Like, what pitch are you on?" He's at this pitch, and he's like, "No, wait a minute," and he goes and gets the music teacher. He goes like, "Is he first chair? I haven't seen you come around to check off his book or anything." He said, "No, he's been coming before and after school." And the kid
Wow.
was just like so like shocked. And then I kept doing it before school, after school. I was dedicated. I became the first chair of all the trombones. I became the first chair of all like the trumpets and tubas and stuff like that. Then I became the first chair.
All the horned instruments.
Yeah, all the horn instruments. Then I became the first chair.
But still playing the tuba.
The
Or
trombone.
the trombone,
Yes,
excuse
yes.
me.
Then I became the first chair of my school, or the 5th grade, and then I started to surpass most of the 6th graders.
Wow.
So where there was maybe only like 3 or 4 people ahead of, I was 3 or 4 books in deep.
Wow.
And the music teacher, Mr. Naaman, which I am very grateful for him, he said, "You're going to be a world-class trombone player." And I was very into it. I kept practicing, but I can remember the one point how it started. I was literally in tears, thinking I wasn't good for it. I wasn't going to do it. I was frustrated. I didn't know if I was able to do it. And it took me months, like a month, to be able to get ahead when everybody else had a head start and started going. And it was the time that I put in and the effort.
That's good.
And then I quit when I got to middle school.
I was going to say, I looked around your house. I didn't see a trombone anywhere.
No, it's in my dad's closet. I paid too much money for this. I'm never getting rid of it. So he's going to get buried with the trombone because he paid too much money, and he thinks. But yeah, it was just like, from there, it's like, okay, I do see practice makes a difference.
Yeah.
I do see that even if it's hard, you try and you overcome and you do it and you put the time in, and anybody can do it. Because, I could very well have just quit then and never been it, but I was the best person on my instrument in my whole grade and almost in the whole school, with people a year ahead of me in time.
Wow, that's a great story. I mean, yeah. that's a perfect picture of feeding the right dog, the right thought life, the right thought life, and working through the negative emotions as well. Because not only did you have, the potential to feed one or the other, you at times were probably bitten by the dog in the dark, and it hurt, and it creates negative emotions, and yet you still overcame those negative emotions, and you really moved to a real positive thought through practice, right? Yeah. So you have a success cycle in that story as well, to work through something that was, in this case, something you'd never even accomplished before, but you exceeded. Mr. Namath. You ever talk to him?
Last time I saw him was maybe 2018. I was walking by Walmart. I saw him, said hi. He said hi. He remembers me and my sister. My sister just played the flute. He's a few years younger than me. But last time I knew, he was still there. So he's a great guy. He really did take me under his arms, and he's like, "You're putting in the work. I'll stand behind you, and we'll stay here as long as we need to." And yeah, he became maybe one of my favorite teachers that I ever had.
Yeah, a very early influencer in your life. Yeah, for sure. That's a good story.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to say is that, like, that doesn't mean the negative thoughts are not going to come once you're so positive. I don't know if we've talked about this already.
Yeah, briefly, but we didn't articulate much.
But it's, those negative thoughts are always going to come. I just want to emphasize that again. It's not that you're not going to have them. That's the whole point of feeding the dog, is they're going to come. Both dogs are going to come to you. Both the negative and the positive thoughts are going to come through your head. And you can possibly have more negative thoughts than positive thoughts. but it's which ones do you take action in, like you were saying?
Yeah.
Which ones are you actually feeding? Which ones are you putting your focus in? Because your focus is also a way of feeding them. Like, okay, this is a stressful situation. You keep thinking about it. There's nothing you can do about it. All you're going to do is going to stress yourself out
Yeah.
and put yourself in a super negative scenario.
Yeah.
But instead, okay, I have this scenario. It's stressful. While it gets resolved, what can I do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you magnifying the problem, or are you magnifying a solution?
Correct.
And what you put your focus on is just like a microscope, or like, it's like when we had a little magnifying glass as kids.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, I've held those suckers up, and it magnifies a certain something, but you put that magnification under the intensity of light, and you focus the magnification on something. I mean, boy, you could pop little ants on the ground or start a fire.
Yeah.
It's that intense. If it's focused on the right thing, you can really produce some really great results. But boy, I'll tell you, if you magnify on the wrong thing through the wrong focus, well, you're going to find yourself in the reverse of a success cycle. You're in a tailspin and you're going the other direction. And boy, just start with something simple.
Yeah.
A little bit of practice, like this story of the trombone, and I love that, or golf, or whatever it happens to be. Now, a lot of this podcast is around business, entrepreneurship, and we've got some big boulders in front of us. This is, I guess, the first time we will be sitting down at a podcast, and now all of a sudden we've been blessed with the opportunity to work collaboratively on a project we never imagined we'd be sitting here starting together. And I'm sure more to come on that. But to me right now, it feels like we're at the bottom of a very big mountain, and there's a big boulder we got to push up. And, I think we'll have to remind each other about the Mr. Namath and the trombone, or Tiger Woods and all the practice shots, because we're going to need it. We're going to have to dig deep and focus in on some really significant tasks ahead.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing, that business really does bring out a lot in you. You get to know yourself in a lot of ways. It gets you to challenge certain places of you. It shapes you, it molds you, because to be able to have a successful business and to be able to be a successful leader, you have to become the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
And a business really puts you out there, because you can go bankrupt, things can go south. It's always there no matter what, but it also helps you try to figure out solutions to bigger problems and other problems that you wouldn't be forced there for. So yeah, definitely need to have as much positive and feed off one another, especially when you have a team.
Yeah.
It's super important, super great if you have a team of positive people, or just a team. Like the saying I like to say is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, then you go as a team.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
And yeah, in business, it's super important to keep it positive and keep trying.
Yeah.
Even though when you want to quit.
Yeah.
Even when you're like, maybe I should just go back to my job. Maybe I just should stop pursuing the business world and stop here and there. And I'm not saying that it doesn't come a time where that is the only option, and you should, but try one more day. Can you survive in business one more day?
Yeah.
And if you can, just try one more day.
Yeah.
And then one day turns into a week, and the week into a month.
Right.
And maybe along that week, you find a gold mine in your business, where you find a connection that sends you all this business, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, you're right. As we wrap up this episode today, I think you're touching on the significance of relationships and how important those are in this process. One of the things that can break negative thoughts, feeding of the dog in the dark, as we've been talking about throughout this episode, is getting some sort of mentorship, getting someone with a perspective outside of your own, whether that's a boss, whether it's a colleague, because maybe some of the challenges that you're having with negative thoughts, actually you have a vacuum or a void of leadership,
Mm-hmm.
and it's actually perpetuating some negative things. But
Yeah.
by nature, you really are a very positive person.
Right.
And I would say that find someone you trust,
Mm-hmm.
either in your industry or in your sphere of influence or not. Find a podcast, a role model. Go to and look at some of the greatest of all time sports figures,
Yeah.
celebrities. What made them? Just listening to some inspirational stories of what people have had to endure to become the success that they
Mm-hmm.
are. But don't do it alone.
Right. No, yeah, that's great. And most people, especially if they're positive people, they're people with some success, they want to help. We all want to help at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So like if somebody came to me, is like, Marco, like, can you help me out? I'm feeling negative. Like I would have no problem. And I think
Right.
most people that I know of that are positive, that has some success, they would most of the time be open to it.
Yeah.
And at least give you a few words or spend some time or over the phone, give you some feedback and try to help you out, to
Yeah.
give you some perspective or give you some direction as to where to go or what to do and how to get out of what you're in.
Yeah, that's definitely one of your most admirable qualities and gifts that you have, is the trust that you have created, not only with peers,
Mm-hmm.
but also with other leaders. You have you're a leader no matter what you do or where you go,
Mm-hmm.
but there are different spheres of influence, and you influence uh, others who manage you as much as you influence the peers that you work with and the peers that report to you.
Mm-hmm.
It is one of your best gifts and attributes. That's why I love spending time with you, because of the positive influence you are. For me, I admire the quality of character that you have, and it's not just a talking point and some theory. You really have you've put a lot of great impact on the lives of people around you. So
I appreciate that.
yeah.
Yeah. And like they say, it takes one to know one. So I know. Yeah.
That's
Like
very nice.
same wise, like there's, that's what we connect so was because we have that same mindset. Like we build those around us. We're looking for ways to help them.
Yeah.
And we stick to our core values. And that's
Yeah.
all I'm doing, which
Yeah.
is similar to what you do. And that's why,
Yeah.
Build those relationships that matter.
Yeah.
And you never know when it's going to pay out.
Yeah. Truth knows truth. And that's why I do agree with you. I think that's why even just having a lunch with you and meeting people, at a restaurant or a person on an elevator, it doesn't matter. We're going to try to figure out how can we change the atmosphere in a positive direction for the people around us. So I guess we'll just see how this next week presents new opportunities where hopefully we can keep the boulder moving up the hill.
Yeah, one push at a time.
One push at a time. All right. Well, until next week, don't forget to subscribe, to share, to like, but more important, engage and interact. We look forward to the comments in the section below. So until next time, we appreciate your time on this episode. All right.
Till next time.
See ya.